So welcome back. I'm Brett. This is Matt. We're here to talk about the Surface Duo 2 again. And this time we're going to talk about the camera. Just to kick off with, Matt, have you used the camera much on the Surface Duo 2?
Yeah, well, it's been about 4 weeks, I think, since we last sat down to talk about Duo 2. So I have used the camera a lot. This weekend, I'm building a Ford Bronco with my daughter. So we're doing a reno. So we're pulling stuff apart, right? So having to document all that, make sure that we can refer back to photos later, because for sure we'll be looking for parts and wondering how they go together. So I've been using it in my shed. But also last week we had a lot of rain here in southeast Queensland, and so floods in the area. So taking it, landscape shots on it, floodwaters, etc. So yeah, I use the camera probably most days on the surface. Even like taking photos of receipts and things as we do our work. Use the camera all the time.
Yeah, actually, so those photos of the flood, you were obviously affected by the floods up there. Your house wasn't flooded, which was great, but plenty of massive floodwaters around your place, and we got some great videos and shots of that. That was cool when you had the internet on, when you could share them, of course. So
yes, of course,
pretty dramatic things to take photos of. I've been shooting a bit as well with the Duo 2 camera. Would have loved to have had some shots while I was camping over the summer, but as we all know, I lost my Surface Duo for that, so didn't get to use it there. But I've been on a few trips and taken some great photos. I was at a waterfall recently, took some photos there on a little day trip. I've been using a lot things that you said as well, things like documenting receipts and all the practical day-to-day things that we do.
QR codes, of course, is something we've all been very familiar with recently.
Yeah. Fortunately, we don't have to do that so much anymore, but yeah, there's been a lot of those QR codes. It's really cool actually that people have finally got up to speed on using QR codes and taking photos of QR codes. That's been a big gain of the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
But so the Surface Duo 2 got a big camera upgrade compared to the Surface Duo 1. We never got the Surface Duo 1, so I can't really compare that practically. But back then it had a single camera. This one's got a triple camera array, and with that came I think with this, in terms of Surface Duo 2, the famous camera bump. So let's talk about that a little bit. As you can see on my Surface Duo 2, because they put this nice triple camera array in there, there's a little bump on the back of it that practically has meant, I'll just take the pen off to demonstrate this, but it's practically meant that when you fold the device around to the back, that there is always a little gap there, right? So that's something that's unique. But I don't know about you. What have you felt about the bump? Has it bothered you?
Well, when you first look at the bump and you go, "Wow, how's this going to work?" But I haven't found that it affects me. And obviously, with the case on the pen case or the charging case, pen cover. When you fold the device back to take a phone call, it's the pen that's keeping it apart, not the camera bump. So,
and that kind of keeps it even, right? So it doesn't kind of flex in on the corner. So maybe we would always advise people to have a pen. This is the whole reason for having this device, right? It's not just two-screen phone. It's a two-screen phone with a pen.
Yeah.
So maybe, like if that's your default, then having it there just makes it better ergonomically. It fits in really well, right? It's like there's just a perfect space for the pen there. Yeah.
Obviously, having it flat in the desk, if you do want to take notes, then that bump on the right-hand side is there underneath your right hand. And probably, going to a portrait posture will be better in that regard. And I actually find taking notes in portrait mode makes more sense anyway. You want the width of the screen for taking notes.
Yeah.
But it does also give you some different postures. You can use the camera, in L-shaped modes in different angles.
Yep.
And with the way the camera app works, that's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, so on that L shape, I found something sort of practical the other day where I was trying to take a photo up and under the hot end of my 3D printer to see what was going on up there. And so I could sort of hold it like so, in that kind of L shape, and I could see the preview on this screen, but the sensor was on the other. So it just gave me almost like a periscope angle on it, which was really handy and cool. So there's some interesting things that you can do just by having the two screens and working together with the new cameras there. So there's a zoom camera, there's a sort of a medium and a wide camera. I don't know what the millimeters on each of them or the equivalents are in terms of focal length. But it's a nice sort of broad range and broad spectrum. You can take good photos just like you would on any other smartphone.
So we've been using obviously the Galaxy Notes before, and what I loved about my Galaxy Note 20 was its nighttime capability was really outstanding.
Yep.
But I'm not a photographer. But Brett, you are a photographer. You're an artiste when it comes to photography. You love to, hobbyist, but you pride yourself in your photography.
Yeah.
So compared to a high end camera or your
Yeah.
your
It,
what do we
it
call
doesn't
it,
matter what
SLR
phone you
setup?
pick up. None of them can come close to what you can do with the the lens, the glass of a beautiful proper dedicated camera, the sensor size. You're just not going to get anywhere near it. And I always sort of chuckle a little bit or roll my eyes when I see those shot on iPhone banners on the freeway or something like that, because the thing about and this is a sort of an in joke with photographers in general. People say, "Wow, that's a great photograph. You must have a great camera." And it's not the camera; it's the photographer, right? And a photographer can see something, frame something, and make a really interesting story with a picture, regardless of the camera that they're using. But if you had the choice, would you shoot it with an iPhone or with a camera? You would always choose the camera. You'd get a much deeper, more detailed image. It'd be sharper. It'd have a depth of field that you could never possibly achieve with a tiny little sensor, behind a tiny little lens.
Yeah.
So, there's an aspect on this which is, hey, at least this is a camera in your pocket, and that can't be taken away. And that's the beauty of all cell phone cameras, right? Is that they're in your pocket. They're so small, compact, and lightweight that you can document the things that you want because they're there with you. And so the better camera you can have on your device, well, the better off you are, and the better, happy snaps and, family pictures and all that sort of stuff that you'll get. So, you sort of can't take away that angle, but, obviously Apple are marketing and that's what they do. They spin these things, but, to suggest that you're making great art by shooting something on your iPhone is ridiculous. Nobody's really doing that. And you're not going to do that on one of these phones either. That said, I think this is the story of the Surface Duo 2, right? It's great hardware. I think that the sensors on this are pretty good. They're up there with some of the best. But the story is that the software has been probably letting it down. And I think, especially in the early days, right? You had the same sort of experiences that I did. It was a bit buggy.
Yeah, and I had it crash a few times, wouldn't launch a few times, but in the last month, I haven't had a single issue with it.
Yeah, me too. It's become much more reliable, right? But I've also noticed that it's significantly faster to open the camera app, and it's also significantly faster to take a shot, which is really what you want. Because that's what these cameras on these phones are about: convenience, and they are that camera in your pocket. So they've got to be fast. You've got to focus well, and all of those sorts of things. And I think it does a really good job of that. And again, that's improved significantly over the couple of months that we've had these phones. So that's a good, a good story there. At least things are getting better. If you've seen other reviews and things like that, the experience on the early ones of these was not great. It is much better now.
Do you think people are buying phones just for the camera, Brett? Do you think that that's the reason why they're buying a particular phone, just for the camera?
I think that the camera absolutely influences their decision to a very big degree. Probably one of the biggest factors in why people choose phones. And for a lot of people, most people aren't photographers, and for most people, this is the best camera that they will own, is the one that's in their cell phone. So it is pretty important to have a good camera. I mean, the thing about this phone and this device is that we think it's about more than that, and we think there needs to be a new category there, which it doesn't currently exist. I mean, really, I think that it's one of the key reasons that people buy a phone now, but we think that there should be other reasons, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the best camera you can get with 2 screens and a pen to get stuff done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way we want to think about it, right? And that's where there's sort of a new frontier for that Microsoft are trying to tackle there. Nobody else is doing this.
So the reality is, from a camera perspective, for a professional, a productive person, a field worker that's decided that they need to document things on the fly, but need the flexibility of device that is multimodal, pen, etc., 2 screens.
Yep, it does the job. Yeah.
It's more than capable of.
Yep. So the things that we talked about, we missed from our Galaxy Notes, which have pretty good cameras in them, but they also have really good software that goes with the camera. Manual mode. There's no way on this device at this stage with the software that's on it to sort of go in and specify the shutter speed that you want or the aperture that you want, those sorts of things. So the software, again, still has a fair way to go in terms of its capability. It does all of the standard stuff. It does the portrait mode and all of the slow-mo modes, all of those sorts of things that you'd expect. But I think that there could be more there, especially with Microsoft's heritage in the camera space. I mean, their whole acquisition of Nokia and the Windows phones of old, they had fantastic cameras that were way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that we see on devices like iPhone now, like that live view thing where you take the photo and you get a little bit of a video with it. I mean, we were doing that on Nokia phones, and Microsoft Lumia phones back in the day. They also had, we're talking 10 years ago, we had USB-C on phones there, and they were exceptional and way ahead of their time, right? So Microsoft had that heritage, and it'd be really good to see them really push forward with this and make it a pretty decent sort of camera device, and perhaps leverage some of that technology they might have had there, and really push it forward. The other thing that I'd really like to see that I think is missing in the software experience is integration with the Microsoft Suite, because like one of the great apps in the Microsoft Suite is the Office Lens software.
Yeah.
And Office Lens is available as a standalone app on all platforms, but it's also built into a lot of the tools that we use, like OneNote, for example. If you take a photo through the OneNote app, that's using Office Lens. In the OneDrive app, also Teams as well. All of these places, they actually have the Office Lens technology, which uses AI and some of Microsoft's server power there to sort of detect the edges of a document or detect what content you're taking a photo, like a document or a receipt or a business card or something like that. It'll detect that, automatically square it up, frame it up, and treat it like a scan. So it's really cool software, and we use it all the time. But why isn't it integrated into the camera app, the default camera app? Because that'd be really cool to see, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunities for Microsoft going forward.
Yeah. So you expect to see the software on the camera change over the coming months?
I would hope so. I don't know anything. I don't know that Microsoft are working on it, but you've got to assume they've certainly been working on the quality and performance aspects of it.
We've seen those improvements.
Yeah. So hopefully, they're listening to these sorts of suggestions, and they're looking at what they can work in. But that, direct to being able to just, double. In fact, that was one of the things I wanted to talk about, is like how easy it is to launch the camera app on this, because I mean, first of all, you can launch the camera app, of course, from a locked screen like this, but to unlock your device, tapping the power button just like that has instantly unlocked it, because that fingerprint reader is so fast and awesome on this.
It's incredible, yeah.
But double tap the power button, and that actually launches the camera there. Yeah. So, and I've got it so that the camera app automatically spans both screens. So it's going to
that's really handy.
Show me a preview of the shot that I've just taken, right? So there's a preview of the shot that I've just taken. Oh, we busted you there in your shorts, Matt. Anyway.
Professional attire. Yeah.
But so that's, it's great to be able to just quickly open up the camera app, see the preview of the shot that you just took in large format rather than as a tiny little thumbnail. You don't have to go in and check, was that shot any good? You can see it instantly. So it's really good like that. But to be able to take a photo of a receipt and not have to change apps or look for something else, just to be able to quickly launch it with that power button would just be absolutely awesome. And again, thinking from a productivity phone perspective, right?
Yeah. But just standard Office Lens tools, plus the ability to preview photos you've taken on the two screens, working with them together. I think it again takes the camera app into other areas that haven't been developed before, and that we're not used to using.
They're not just competing against an iPhone or a Galaxy S22 or whatever it is. They're actually doing something that's unique. Another part of that I just thought of that's built into Office Lens is the immersive reader. So again, a really incredible application of the technology from an accessibility perspective is that I could just take a photo of a document and have it instantly read back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I'm finding myself a lot more doing these ones, when I'm trying to read something really small on the screen and having to hold the device away, like our mum used to do, right?
Yeah,
the short vision is going.
I'm getting there. I'm having to do this more and more, right? So I'm following along that trajectory as well.
So there's times when it'd be so handy to be able to take a photo of something and just have the content read out to you. Or
I've seen this done a lot. Have you seen this? Yep. People are taking photos of the menus in a restaurant, for example, so they can zoom in and read them.
In on it.
Yeah, right. So they've seen this lots.
Yeah.
So that is very functional, very useful.
So Microsoft are all about accessibility over the last few years, right? And again, with their mission statement to empower people to achieve more, this is right in their wheelhouse. And this is the sort of stuff. And in fact, they have built some incredible camera apps, mainly on iOS, interestingly, that do things like, assistance for the blind or, vision impaired, that sort of thing. So those kinds of assistive apps as well, I think, if they could incorporate that into the Surface Duo 2, again, they're doing something really unique and compelling with the device. So that's where we'd like to see them go.
Just taking it a step back into the device categories that we're talking about, right? What we're talking about with the camera bump in particular and the camera integration and all these high-end phones is really interesting because we had this narrative and we've talked about, the progression of phones down to the tiny mobile phones and how they've gone bigger again. But, we hear the marketing spiel, and I'm going to say marketing spiel. I won't say the other term because it's a lot of just rubbish, but, thinnest and lightest. This is the thinnest phone we've ever built, and then it bends in your pocket because it's so thin, right? So that's, Stop talking about thin and size and fast. But hang on a second, we've got a 4mm bump on the camera now on our latest phones because thin and light actually wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the quality of the photos I wanted to take. And what we're saying about devices like Duo 2 is it's not about the marketing glamour. It's about what can this device do for you? How can it work for you? What size does it need to be to help you get stuff done? That's far more important. So just bring it back to our camera.
And I think it's interesting that like the way you put it before, like, is it the most important thing that people evaluate when they're choosing a new phone camera? And I think it is currently, but should it be? And could it be more? I think that's a really interesting discussion. And when you think about some of these sorts of assistive pieces and bits of technology that can make you more productive, like the whiteboard and those sorts of things, Microsoft could really go somewhere with this. Question is, can they do it quick enough to sort of capture the hearts and minds, so to speak? And we'll see, I guess, is the thing. The other thing that I didn't mention there is a couple of things, actually. The selfie camera, so the forward-facing camera, does a pretty good job in my view. Again, you've got the portrait mode, those sorts of things.
Plus the ability for joining calls on it. So, either in laptop mode or I know what you call that mode, but propped up mode, right? So being able to use it as a second camera or a primary camera in a Teams call, joined on multiple devices.
And that's...
I just want to give you a practical example of that, actually, Brett, just here, because I was in a meeting again this morning with an executive, and their particular workflow is that they take photos on their phone of agendas for meetings so they can be on their device, right? And I was able to say, hey, you know what? You can actually just join the meeting on the second device. And how about you actually have the agenda up that way? You can then work on your large screen device and use the small device as your camera for your meeting, for your remote meeting.
Thinking about that too, right? Because you've sort of got that laptop mode, it's easier than any other device to actually just sit down on the desk and prop it up in a way that you can engage in the conversation.
Yep.
And I'm always battling with this, like multiple devices scenarios. Everybody is, right? You want to be able to take notes with a flat device on the desk, but you need to have, if you had a Surface Pro like my Surface Pro 8 here, right, the camera's pointing at the roof, and that's not practical for video conferencing. So do you plug in an external webcam? You can't really do that practically when you're mobile. So last week we were up in Sydney together. I did a fair bit of this where I had the video conference going here on the Duo 2 sitting there, and I was taking notes on the Pro 8 because there's more screen real estate there, or vice versa.
There's something else I like about that, Brett, because you can have this just propped up behind your flat surface as you're writing notes. And so the camera is really close to where you're writing, whereas typically, you've got people, you're looking at the side of their head because they're taking notes over here. Or, the camera, they're looking up here because that's where they've got their images versus the camera. So you can actually get your camera quite close to where you're focused and taking your notes, which makes that human contact that little bit better, I think, in those type of meetings.
Yeah, agreed. So I think that there's a really great practical pairing there as well between, say, a Surface Pro and the Surface Duo 2.
Yeah, I think so.
Conferencing. And, we talked about it in our video conferencing, video. The camera and the microphone combo, they're very good quality. And, Microsoft, this is something that they have done really well on this device with Teams and the dual screen setup. That works pretty well, and having a lot more screen real estate to be able to see what it is that people are sharing and see other people as well as your own self view, that works really well on the Duo 2. And the hardware, that forward-facing camera does a great job. It's more than adequate for that task. Yeah. Cool.
So overall, I think the camera is more than adequate for the work that we're doing with it on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, I use it every day, and have not had reliability issues or photographic issues from a non-photographer perspective?
Well, so the one thing that I'll maybe just chuck out there for comments is, has anybody tried to use it on a selfie stick? Because I think that might be a little challenging. I guess you could fold it around, use the inside camera, maybe take a selfie that way.
Are they still a thing, selfie sticks? Are we serious? Are we still talking about selfie sticks?
And I have one, so I don't use it much. But yeah, so lots of people do use them, especially back in the days when we could travel and people were tourists. That might be an interesting question. Could you use the Surface Duo 2 with a selfie stick?
So I have had a conversation with people about using this in a like on a magnetic mount in a vehicle, right? And the answer is that actually the magnet on the cover in particular is really good for those sorts of mounts that you would magnet your phone to.
Okay.
And it's been surprisingly good in those scenarios. So maybe the selfie stick maybe the selfie stick isn't as bad as what we think it would be on this.
Yeah. I mean, it is a practical thing, right? So yeah, well, so that's our bit on the camera on the Surface Duo 2. It's an important piece of the puzzle. It's getting better and better. Tell us your experience on the camera if you've got a Surface Duo 2 in the comments below. And make sure you've hit subscribe and join us next week for the next video on Surface Duo 2 as well.